Hello everybody, I'm Eternal Flame here, and today I'm here to talk about a possibility of something that Yuji might actually be able to awaken in the future, which is anti-gravity. Now there are a lot of things that I need to answer in this video to explain why Yuji might be able to awaken anti-gravity in the future, and why this might be Yuji's curse technique, and now he's actually properly able to use it. But before we get into any of this, let's actually do an explanation of what anti-gravity is, and why I think it's linked directly back to Yuji, for those of you who do not remember what anti-gravity is, since it has been a long while since we've last seen that curse technique. Anti-gravity is the curse technique that Kenjaku used in his battle against both Yuki and Choso, but more so using the reversal of it, which is the gravity system, in order to slam both of them on the ground. Through the reversal of the technique, Kenjaku was able to manipulate gravity on the ground for a total of 6 seconds in order to amplify it heavily. It's also possible that he can do it through the normal technique as well, but we don't really know that much about how anti-gravity works, just how gravity works, because Kenjaku only used the reversal of it against Choso and Yuki. Now we already know that Kenjaku is Yuji's parent, however there's something even more important about anti-gravity that I think needs to be mentioned, which that more important thing about anti-gravity is who it comes from, which it comes from Kaori Itadori. Now this is going to be important if you can already see where this theory is going, however before we can even continue with that, I have to talk about two separate things which are very important for the potential of Yuji always having a curse technique in these types of theories. Which the first and main important thing is Gojo's statement that has been made extremely early on, where Gojo says that people usually manifest their curse techniques when they are children, and if they don't manifest them, they just have no innate talent at all early on in the beginning of the series. And the second important thing is the fact that when Yuji had fought against Higuruma and Higuruma used his domain expansion, he ended up taking away Yuji's cursed energy rather than Yuji's cursed technique if he did always have anti-gravity. So even if it was that Yuji was just a massive late bloomer, that wouldn't actually be the case because of the fact that Higuruma would have taken that technique away rather than taking away his cursed energy in their fight. Which the Higuruma fight basically hard confirms that Yuji does not have a cursed technique, or at least he doesn't have a cursed technique that is awakened at all. After all, there is something very important we find out both from the end of Shibuya as well as Junpei himself, which is it's very possible for people to have cursed techniques, have the potential to awaken a cursed technique, but not have the brain capable of actually awakening said cursed technique. With Junpei being the first ever example of this. Junpei was just a normal kid, a normal person who had no idea about anything about cursed energy. Now he was capable of seeing Mahito, so he did have the potential to become a sorcerer, but he didn't have a cursed technique at all because he wasn't a sorcerer. However, Mahito ended up transfiguring his brain and altering his brain to that of a sorcerer right after, allowing Junpei to awaken his cursed technique and actually be able to utilize a cursed technique. Something that he should have awakened when he was a child if he did have a cursed technique, however he had the wrong brain for a cursed technique. Until Mahito ended up transfiguring that section of the brain, which more than likely has to do with the black box in particular that was talked about later on in the Sukuna fight. Furthermore, when Kenjaku absorbed Mahito after Shibuya, he did it on a massive scale, transfiguring every single human he had marked in order to give them the capacity to awaken their own cursed techniques. The importance of this is this, that it is very possible for sorcerers to be born with a cursed technique but not have the proper brain in order to utilize said cursed technique. Which is what I'm suggesting is the case for Yuji Itadori, that Yuji does actually have a cursed technique, however his brain is not configured in order to actually utilize that cursed technique. His brain is the brain of a non-sorcerer. And Sukuna ended up awakening his cursed energy, but he did not end up awakening his ability to utilize a cursed technique. However, now that Yuji has the soul book and all the soul knowledge that Yuki had access to, it could be very possible that Yuji has the capability to alter his own brain in order to awaken a cursed technique on himself, in order to awaken his innate cursed technique that he should have had, because he has the brain of a non-sorcerer. However, Yuji can alter the soul in order to do this. Now you might be thinking this might be a Mahito exclusive capability, that no one else is even capable of doing this. However, I very heavily disagree with this, and I think it's actually possible for everyone to alter their own brain if they are aware enough of the soul. It's just Mahito's curse technique allows him to do it to both himself and other people much easier in comparison to other people having to do it on their own to themselves. The reason that I believe that is for a couple of reasons. Number one, Yuki's entire plan in order to eradicate curses and why she abandoned that plan. Yuki believes it's possible to make every single person into a sorcerer, which leads to the possibility that Yuki believes it's possible to awaken cursed energy in every single person. The only reason that she abandoned that plan is because Tengen's barriers exist and not allowing other people from other countries to awaken their own cursed energy, making Japan have a monopoly on it, not because her plan would have failed. Or, well, Yuki's plan would have failed, but not because it was impossible for her to do, but because there was a literal thumb blocking her capability of doing that plan to begin with, and would only limit her to being able to do it to Japanese citizens. But if that's not enough for you, there is another reason, which is because Kenjaku had been looking for sorcerers for a very long while in order to fill out the Culling Games. Longer than Mahito had shown off that he had this capability, because Mahito only did it in a few months for his first time ever on Junpei. It's even made pretty clear that Kenjaku and Mahito throw back and forth hypotheses about the soul together themselves, which is made very clear in the banter between Kenjaku and Mahito when Gojo was being held up inside the prison realm about to be sealed away. Furthermore, I don't think Kenjaku would be able to mark over 1,000 people in the small amount of time he would have with Mahito when he knew this was a capability, so I do think it would have taken even more time, and that lends even more evidence to the possibility that it's possible to do this even without a curse technique. Stack that with the fact we know that Kenjaku has done at least one Culling Games in the past where Mahito wouldn't have existed at all, and it could very well be possible that Kenjaku had actually suggested this to Mahito to see if Mahito himself will be capable of doing this much easier, of awakening sorcerers' brains in order to awaken curse techniques. All of this is just to support one point of evidence, which is it's possible to awaken your own curse technique if one is aware enough of the soul in order to shapeshift their own soul in order to make it so that they have the possible brains in order to awaken a curse technique, as both Yuki and Kenjaku have suggested that this is possible even without using Mahito's curse technique. Just Mahito's curse technique is a way to use it much easier and make it much faster. And who has the notebook on the soul that would definitely be able to teach Yuji how to do this, considering that Yuki's entire plan at first was to make it so all people had cursed energy and they were all sorcerers until Yuki ended up abandoning that plan. None other than the person who's able to strike the soul already, to strike the soul of Sukuna and show his understanding of the soul, Yuji Itadori himself, as Yuji Itadori had read through the entire book and gained quite a bit of understanding of what it was capable of, especially considering Yuki was well aware of Mahito and the threat that Mahito had actually possessed. So it could be very possible that Yuki inside of the Soul Book had written down the steps in order to make it so people who don't have the brains of Jujutsu sorcerers yet have cursed techniques, and how to convert those people into people who can actually fully utilize those cursed techniques, and Yuji later on, or even right now, is going to convert his own brain to have a cursed technique. And before one of you guys potentially say in the comment section that Yuji already has a curse technique and that's blood manipulation, that is not actually Yuji's curse technique, that is the curse technique of his brothers that he got from being a symbiotic vessel with them, because we know through Hana that once you are a symbiotic vessel with the person you are a vessel of, or the cursed object you are a vessel of, you are able to utilize their curse technique. You share energies because you are a symbiotic vessel. So while Yuji is using the curse technique of his brothers, it is very possible that this is not actually his own curse technique, and he has a separate curse technique that he can use alongside blood manipulation. Or he would have to hot switch between two curse techniques that he's using at a time, mainly because we've never really seen anyone actually utilize two curse techniques at the same time. It's always been one and then switching to another. Anyway, that was a lot of evidence just to go over the possibility of Yuji having a curse technique. However, I know this all has to be gone over in order to talk about the possibility of Yuji having a curse technique and awakening a curse technique in the future. So now we're going to get into why I think Yuji is going to end up awakening anti-gravity manipulation and utilizing anti-gravity manipulation in combat. Now, the main reason I believe that if Yuji does have an innate curse technique, it's going to be anti-gravity is actually a pretty simple reason, and that is purely because of narrative payoff. The main reason that I think this would have a massive narrative payoff is because of the fact that Gege went out of his way to establish the fact that anti-gravity had come from Kaori Itadori, which was something that Gege did not need to do at all, as he already had Yuki basically established that Kenjaku had 3 or more curse techniques. It had been well known of the possibility of Kenjaku having several curse techniques, and a lot of people would have just accepted that Kenjaku just has anti-gravity, and he never would have needed to say who this curse technique originates from. Yet Gege goes out of his way to establish that this is the curse technique of Kaori Itadori, something he never needed to do, but he still went out of his way to do it. You know, Yuji's mom. And that's the main reason I actually do think that Yuji's going to end up awakening anti-gravity. Because Gege had gone out of his way to establish that this was the curse technique that belonged to Kaori Itadori. And I don't think that was just to explain where the curse technique came from. I believe that was to be built up for Yuji awakening anti-gravity in the future, to explain it and show that it wasn't just out of nowhere. So it can be called back to and remember that this was the curse technique of Yuji's mom. Furthermore, it would also explain something else, which is why Kenjaku wanted to take Kaori Itadori to begin with. Now, a lot of people have seen Jin Itadori as the more important person for the creation of Yuji Itadori, and that was Kenjaku's main target. However, there is something very, very interesting that I've always found about this. Kenjaku went for Kaori's body and not Jin's body. If the only important part of making Yuji Itadori into the strong vessel that he is was Jin Itadori, he would have just stolen Jin's body and then had a child with that. Yet he very purposefully chose to steal Kaori's body instead, which could possibly mean the manifestation of Kaori Itadori's curse technique is more important than we have been thinking about. And this could be where that importance comes, because Kenjaku might possibly want Yuji to end up with the anti-gravity technique. Furthermore, we also know it's possible for hereditary curse techniques to exist, because projection sorcery is a hereditary curse technique due to Naobito being Naoya's father and them both having the same curse technique, as well as the Limitless being a hereditary curse technique. So while I do believe that Jin Itadori is very important in the creation of Yuji as a curse technique, because if he wasn't, Kenjaku would have just had Kaori Itadori go for someone else instead after stealing Kaori's body, the same can be said for Kaori themselves because of the reason that Kenjaku chose to keep Kaori's body. Stack that with the fact that we also know that Kenjaku sees Kaori Itadori's curse technique as a relatively good one, because he chose to keep that curse technique around when he could have very easily, in between the time of Yuji's birth and JJK0, just start collecting curse techniques from other bodies, yet he chose to stay with Kaori Itadori to keep that curse technique. And for that reason, I believe it's very likely that Kenjaku wanted Yuji to awaken anti-gravity in the future, while it could also be possible that Kenjaku is the reason that Yuji never awakened it, altering his brain to make sure he doesn't have that curse technique in order for him to in the future awaken it at an even stronger point. Or to keep this as a hidden secret from Sukuna, so Sukuna could never figure it out until later on when Yuji would figure it out on his own. After all, we know Kenjaku has high amount of expectations for Yuji Itadori. Now, the other reason why I think Yuji's going to end up awakening anti-gravity is mainly because anti-gravity very heavily fits within Yuji's fighting style, whether it could be used to make himself move even faster or give him basically an air hop-like ability, but also give him the ability to fly, but also just give him the ability to hold other people still for using the reversal of it, like how Kenjaku used it in order to land his own soul punches on the opponent. So it's not just a good curse technique that would fit very heavily with Yuji's style, but it's also one that has a bit of possible build-up and explanation for it, rather than just being a random curse technique out of nowhere, because we know where it comes from, being Kaori Itadori, and it's not just going to feel like it's just this random thing introduced out of nowhere. The final reason is a little bit of a smaller one, but it actually isn't really that big of a logic-based reason, just a personal reason. I think we have too many blood manipulation users, I'm going to be honest with you guys. And I also don't really want Yuji to overshadow Choso, and I don't think Yuji having a blood manipulation domain would honestly be good. So him getting an anti-gravity based domain and actually showing what his mom's curse technique is capable of, because we only really got to see it once and how Kenjaku used it, so there might actually be more applications of it that we aren't aware of that Yuji might end up utilizing, and it would be really, really cool to see it, especially comboing with Choso himself. However, that's all the reasons that I think that Yuji's going to end up awakening an anti-gravity-like technique. So, I want to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below. While you're down there, be sure to subscribe if you want to, or not, that's up to you. So, I'm going to see y'all later. Peace out, have a good day.